I was absolutely overwhelmed by the cultures that were there. And I was also fascinated by it. And not only did I try to become more knowledgeable of the cultures into which I was going all the time, I started doing research on the field of intercultural communication and got into this thing called cultural competency and cultural intelligence. And it just, it was like I was a kid back in undergraduate school again, and I was reading everything I could find. You know that everything today is global. Let's just look at Kansas City for a moment and the global connections that are there. In the Kansas City public school system, there are 48 different languages that are spoken. We have 6 ethnic chambers of commerce right here in Kansas City. We have 75 ethnic populations represented in the metro area. Kansas City business exports to over 65 countries, nearly $100 million worth of export a year. That's Kansas City, right here in the heart of the Midwest. Every university and high school in the 8-county metro area has connections to cultures internationally through programs like AFS or international studies or summer trips that go overseas. It's just amazing the type of connections that we have. Today there are almost 7 billion of us. Actually there are, what, 7.1 billion of us now in the world, speaking over 6,000 languages. And what we tend to do when we talk about a culture is to very quickly narrow it down and consider stereotypes. Now, that's not all wrong. You have to form generalizations in order to work your way through whatever is going on in your life. But the stereotypes can also, if you settle with those, lead you to very shallow understandings. And just for instance, I love this picture. These are called what? Anybody know? They're in South Korea. They're called kimchi pots. You have this mix of vegetables and vinegar and fermentation stuff that goes into these pots, and they bury the pots into the ground for 3 to 6 months, and then they have this condiment called kimchi that they would eat like we would eat pickles or a relish or ketchup. All of these pots look pretty much the same. They come from 5 different clays handmade by over 100 different artisans at this particular village where I took the picture. Each one has a unique glaze on it, even though they all look the same color. Each one is a different size than the other. And so that's what we want to talk about when we consider developing a better understanding of culture that makes us competent or more culturally intelligent. Allowing ourselves to say, I want to go beyond the stereotype. I want to become more aware of what is underneath whatever may be happening to me culturally. So, one of the things that we understand as we begin to become more aware of culture around us is the fact that particularly in America, there is no such thing as an ethnically pure person. It's estimated that 90% of the American population are ethnically diverse. Let's just take this beautiful young girl here, my granddaughter. She happens to be Japanese and Irish and Scottish, Cherokee, German, and English. All wrapped up into that little bundle of joy is all of those different types of cultures. It's fascinating. All of us, I think, are pretty much in the same position. So let's ask ourselves, what is culture? And this is where it really gets funky. So cultural intelligence is developing the capacity to become more aware of what's going on around you and to begin to understand and to develop a strategy for what may be going on. We recognize that culture are arts and crafts, drama, language, music. It's also location, country, geography, behavior, mannerisms, practices, social skills, history, But culture is also gender, race, political affiliation, social class, family, religious preference. And in all of that mix, there have been a number of studies that have been done in which there are a number of scales that have been developed that help us kind of understand how there seem to be certain preferences or tendencies along broad themes within certain cultures. And I've picked just 6 basic ones that begin to give us, I think, a little bit of insight. One would be the concept of equality and hierarchy. Some cultures are built on this concept of democracy and equality, and we all are of the same worth. And yet within our world there are many cultures that are built upon the idea that there is a hierarchy, that one has more status than another. Most of East Asia is a hierarchical culture. And so just understanding that helps you begin to think about how you greet someone, because it matters. Where you sit at a table when you're beginning negotiations, how you begin to visit with another person. It has nothing to do, please understand, in terms of the equality hierarchy scale, it's not a matter of discriminating or making someone else subordinate, but it's a matter of recognizing in that setting how you need to act and react within that hierarchical structure. There is the direct culture and the indirect culture. Germans and the Dutch, believe it or not, are considered to be the most direct people in the world. There are other cultures that are much more indirect. And I've participated in the last few years in trying to negotiate or resolve conflict in cultures where triangulation is the only way in which you approach it. Someone's upset with another person, there's no way in which the two of them would ever get together. There's got to be a trusted third party that kind of is able to work through the situation with them. That's a more indirect approach. There's the idea of seeing yourself as an individual. America was built on this concept of individualism. And there is the group concept. There are some Asian societies and cultures that are built upon the idea that you don't make a decision until everyone has come to a consensus, and in that consensus then the decision arises. Task and relational, risk and cautious, fixed time, fluid time are all very basic cultural scales. Now, just to give you an example, what do you think this is? I love this. It's a water clock. A water clock, that's right. Water starts at the top, goes down, goes all the way to the bottom. In terms of being precise with time, it's not very precise. But it's an example of fluid time, no pun intended. It's not precise in the mechanical sense that a clock is, but it is precise in the flow, okay? In the water flowing through. Have an understanding of the different concepts that are going on there? What do we want? We want a mechanical precision of it begins now, it ends now. This culture wants a mechanical precision understanding of the flow, the process is working. The flow continues. Well, I'd like for you to look in your packet, and you should have a paper that says, what is your cultural competence? What's your score, your CQ score? You found that? Should be the first or second page. First page, turn the first page over. Yeah, this one right here, and on the back. What I'd like for you to do now for just 2 or 3 minutes is turn around with the people around you and answer as many of those questions as you can. What's the answer to the first one? Brazil is the largest country, so big it borders all but 2. What are the 2 nations? Chile's one, the other one is?